The men's tournament is underway in Milan. How do we evaluate players there versus on their pro teams? Plus, Gary Bettman speaks from Italy and our Olympic-sized big games to watch this weekend, all on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everyone. Thanks for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day and for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. I am Rachel Donner from Locked On Flyers. I'm here each and every Friday with Gil Martin of Locked On Islanders. You can find our show for free over on YouTube. It's anywhere you listen to podcasts. You subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available. How we doing, Gil?
We're doing. I am enjoying the Olympics so far. Excitement is building. The women are almost at the, elimination round. So we're getting there. This is good stuff.
Yeah, I am still very angry about the ice dancing results, and Chalk and Bates were robbed. But that is a different ice sport. We will get back to the hockey here. And, one of the most interesting things to me about this tournament, as was also the case in the Four Nations tournament last year, is you look at who thrives in this short tournament format, right, versus in the longevity of an NHL season. And, obviously some of these teams at the Olympics they're all all-star teams, but some more starry than others, let's say, right? In terms of looking at like Canada, for instance, and in terms of it being an all-star of all-star teams. And you would say the same for Team USA and Czechia, Finland, Sweden, right? Your hockey powerhouses, right? But you look at which players kind of step up and perform in these environments that are concentrated with like a national team tilt to it versus, an 82 game and multi-round playoff system. Like it's a different kind of player, right?
It can be. I mean, there are guys who can do both, but there are guys who, there are guys who are better at sprints than marathons, right? And
right.
To make an analogy, and I think that, the Olympics where the whole tournament can be over in 5 games and you're done, that's a different animal than an 82 game NHL regular season followed by hopefully playoff rounds after that. But it is a different mindset, I think.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me because you look at a team like, I don't know, the Toronto Maple Leafs, let's say, right? Where, just to pick a team out, picking a team out of a hat, let's say, right? Where you look at what they have often done during the regular season. They've been one of the top 3 teams in their division. They make it to the playoffs. And then when they're in that compacted high pressure tournament, things just fall apart and in a lot of ways, and they haven't been able to make it past the second round. And even getting to the second round has been like almost non-existent for them, in their current incarnation. Right. And you look at, guys like Auston Matthews, who are on Team USA, and Mitch Marner, who's obviously no longer with the Leafs, but has been with them until this year, who's on Team Canada. And you look at, what they were able to do or not do in this playoff format, but how does that translate for guys like them into an Olympic format?
It is a different animal in some ways. I mean, first of all, you're playing with new teammates at an Olympic tournament, not the same guys who you played multiple seasons or one season or even part of a season with. So that changes it. And then I think there are also some similarities, though, because, and I think we've noticed this more recently between last year's Four Nations and this year's Olympics, the intensity level and the physicality has actually been ramped up. You go back years and the Olympics were almost I'm not going to say contact free, but a lot less physical than a regular season NHL game or a playoff NHL game.
Right.
Now people are hitting and there is a lot of physicality. This is more like playoff hockey in a lot of ways than regular season hockey.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said for that. Like you're right. We saw that last year in Four Nations. We've seen that so far. Guys are people are getting hurt already in both the women's and the men's tournament, which is not great, obviously, for their national teams or for their regular teams. And we'll see what happens with Josh Morrissey, and we saw Marie-Philippe Poulin on the women's side has gotten hurt. We'll see how that could potentially affect Team Canada on that side of the tournament, and also maybe the Montreal Victoire in the PWHL. But all that being said, you also have this compacted ice, which may exacerbate some of those instances. But how does that change for you in terms of guys being successful as quote unquote playoff players, or like an Olympic tournament player versus a regular season guy?
I mean, sometimes guys just get up for big moments. I mean, players are excited to be in the Olympics. Like, I'll use an example being, the guy covering the Islanders, and Bo Horvat, since he was a little kid, wanted to represent Canada in the Olympics. He's over 30 years old. This is the first chance he's gotten. It means so much to him to be able to do that. He steps up, even though he's on the fourth line, he scores a goal in his very first Olympic game. I think there are guys
ex-Islander Brock Nelson.
Yes.
All similar, right?
Red hot. And he's doing that without Nathan McKinnon, right? So
yeah.
But I mean, all of that aside, there are people who really, men and women who really take their game to another level because of the size of the event and the enormity of it. And then there are other people who maybe are intimidated by the enormity of the event. And then maybe you're tying back some of those Toronto Maple Leafs players in that category, where you get to the bigger stage where the game is more intense, where the game is more physical and more compacted emotionally and physically, and they just aren't able to take their game to the next level.
Right. And that's where I'm wondering, like, can you use this Olympic tournament as a predictive model for how the playoffs could go, in terms of, like, will some of these guys get either a boost or have their confidence shot a little bit, depending on how this tournament plays out? I mean, I mentioned Auston Matthews, he scored in the first game for Team USA. So that's a good start for him. But I think that it'll be interesting to see how this tournament plays out for guys like that are supposed to be the difference makers. And then how does that carry over into their NHL play?
I think the idea of positive momentum would be bigger than negative momentum.
I agree. Yeah.
I think that for a player who individually does well, or even whichever team ends up winning the gold medal, both for the men and for the women, I think that would give them an emotional boost of confidence. Whereas even if an individual plays poorly or their team plays poorly, I think you can sort of dismiss it a little more readily emotionally and say, oh, I wasn't playing with my teammates. It was a different size rink. It was, you can go through all the different excuses as to why things didn't happen that way. But you get back to your NHL team and everything sort of feels quote unquote normal again, and you're back and ready to hit the stretch drive.
Yeah, and I think on the negative side, you can also use that as a motivating factor to, prove yourself in the end of the NHL regular season and into the playoffs, if your team is a playoff team, in fact. But I think the other major area for me that it's just a whole other world here is goaltending, right?
Yeah.
Where you have a guy like Jordan Binnington who, like, you might not pick him to be on your NHL team because of his regular season play, but that guy steps up in these big international games. It's absolutely bonkers.
Big game Binnington, right? I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
and he's won a Stanley Cup. It's been a while, but he has led a team or goaltended a team to a Stanley Cup. But yeah, in these kind of tournaments, he seems to be able to, raise his level of play. But over an 82 game season, if I need to win a game in late January between two random NHL teams, Jordan Binnington is not in my top 15 goalies that I'm going to pick to, if I'm drafting from scratch. But give me an Olympic tournament, I'm considering him a lot more seriously.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I'd say like a goaltender like Yusei Saros plays the same,
right,
no matter where he is. And like his game doesn't change. But you also have potentially these overinflated goaltenders from like your team Italy, just some of the smaller teams, right? Where you have goaltenders like the Slovakian goaltender as well, who have to face like 50, 60 shots from an NHL all-star team and makes them look like incredible goaltenders. But like, there's a reason why the Italian goalie is playing in the Swiss league and not in North America, right? Because you look at the broader picture of their play. These guys are guys that are going to step it up in these big international tournaments because they have to, and B, this is like their moment.
This is their Stanley Cup. This is their the pinnacle of, this is them saying, this is the toughest level of competition I'm ever going to face likely in my career. And I'm going to show that I belong on this stage as much as I can. And we have seen in the past, goaltenders keep countries that on paper did not belong in a game, in some games, even stealing a game or two here and there. So yeah. And I think that's also something that I love about the Olympics, where for however long, whether it's a week, 2 weeks, a game, 2 games, guys step it up and have their moment in the sun, and maybe they're never heard from again, but you can't take away that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. But we'll continue to watch this story as the tournament progresses, and then see how these individual players who stand out in the Olympics fare in the NHL playoffs as they get underway in a couple of months. In the meantime, Gary Bettman's over in Italy and had some things to say about the games as well as how it relates to the NHL and future plans there. We're going to get to that coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. The Winter Games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking in for events that you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. And that's why following the Winter Games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care about most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. The drama of curling matches that start slow and somehow get intense fast. Speed skating races that are decided by inches or millimeters. Hockey games that feel different right from the opening face-off. Even niche events like that become must-watch when you're fully locked into the competition. FanDuel keeps the entire Olympic experience engaging from start to finish. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game.
There's nothing like being in an NBA arena with the crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting those tickets, though, that part hasn't always been so simple. That's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs with you, the fans. You can pull up the Game Time app, pick an upcoming NBA game, and get those tickets locked in within minutes. The best part is being able to see the view from your seat before you buy, which makes the decision much easier. Plus, their zone deals stand out where you choose the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save even more. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. And remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. Thanks for making Locked On NHL your first listen of the day, and thanks for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. You can join the Everydayer Club and get your favorite team show with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/everydayerclub to learn more. So Gary Bettman is over there in Italy taking in his NHL All-Stars on their national teams. And man, like sometimes Gary just sometimes like it's not about you, sir. And one of the things that came out of it that was interesting to me was that he said that the NHL was unique in terms of other sports in that, the Olympics are interrupting the season, right? And no other league has that, which is garbage, right? Because it does not acknowledge the existence of the PWHL, which is doing the same thing for the Winter Games. But also, like in the summer, there's like other leagues that interrupt their regular run of seasons on a regular basis for international play. Now, it may not be the Olympics,
right?
But every single time. But like your soccer season or football, depending on where you are, would interrupt every 6 to 8 weeks. There's an international break, and everybody goes and they play with their national teams for qualifiers or regional tournaments or whatever. And then you come back and you continue your season. It's just that the NHL doesn't have the experience with it, and they haven't had to plan for it before. That's the only difference.
Well, wait a minute, though. Here's one thing that has always baffled me. Basketball is played in the winter. Why is it a Summer Olympic sport?
Because it's played in the warm, because you wear shorts. I don't know.
I do not understand why a sport that is played in the winter
also
gets to be in the summer.
There are summer leagues, like
there are, but
in Europe.
Yeah, there are other leagues, but they're not the leagues that are the pinnacle of their sport. The NBA doesn't play in the summer. They don't have to interrupt anything to have their top players go. I understand what you're saying, and he's overstating his case. But out of the major North American sports leagues, hockey leagues are the only ones that really have to drop everything specifically for the Olympics. And I mean, I know it doesn't fit, but I would almost prefer that hockey be a Summer Olympic sport just to not have to interrupt the season and compress the schedule and go through all of this difficulty that we deal with. If they make allowances for basketball so it could be in the summer, couldn't they do the same thing for hockey?
And put hockey in the Summer Olympics?
Why not?
That would be weird.
It would be weird, but it's no weirder than the NBA being in the Summer Olympics when it's a winter sport.
I guess I just don't see basketball as a winter sport in the general sense of it.
Right.
I think basketball is an anytime sport.
I get that, but it's played in the professional league plays in the winter.
In North America, the professional league plays.
Okay, but that's
North
the best
America
league in
is
the world.
Not the world, Gil.
But that's the best league in the world. The best players in the world.
Who cares? There are countries all over the world. I'm gonna give you a no for me, dog, on that one.
All good. You're free to do it. But I would like to end the conflict. Is basically what I'm saying.
Fair enough. And I just think Gary Bettman has an overinflated sense of importance of the NHL relative to world sport.
Yes, but I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
Now, one of the other interesting things that they've talked about is in terms of Russia, right? And that Bettman has said, we're just going to follow what the IIHF policy is on this in terms of including Russia. So, we're going on the assumption that for their World Cup tournament that's going to happen in a couple of years, unless the IIHF, rescinds the restriction, there won't be a Russian team, even though it'll be an NHL run tournament, much like there is no Russian team in the Olympics right now. And that I find, or Belarus. And I find both of those things eminently fascinating.
because he's not making an independent decision.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Easiest.
is this part of the backroom deal of getting the NHL players in the Olympics, that he has to, he's like, well, we'll do what you say on this. You have to do what we say on something else. Like,
Maybe.
what was that part of the negotiation?
That wouldn't surprise me at all if that is indeed the case. And I have conflicted feelings about Russia and Belarus being let back in. From a purely athletic standpoint, I want to see the best players in the world play. From a political standpoint, I totally understand why the IIHC did what they did. So, it's a tough one. It's a tough one, but I think what the NHL is doing is taking the path of least resistance.
Oh, of that, I am certain on that front. Now, the other interesting thing is this whole access to content, because, obviously we know the IOC and the Olympics are very strict with their content. You can't share anything or repost anything or take a clip of anything. They are very litigious, and they're like super quick on the takedowns. If you put anything up on YouTube or try to, or anything like that, it is down within minutes. Right. And so the fact that the NHL, which does not have a relationship with NBC, who are the rights holders, like they got permission to repost NBC content, which I think, it's a good middle ground for them to at least stay active from a social media perspective during the Olympics.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was almost certainly a condition of them saying, yeah, we'll send our players, but you've got to throw us this bone and allow us to promote this as much as we reasonably can. But in deference to you, we will just retweet, we will just repost, we will not create our own original content.
Right. And then the last thing, when you're talking about the ice itself and some of the problems, Gary's like, I'm keeping my mouth shut, essentially. Like, we'll debrief afterwards and we'll make our demands afterwards. But while the games are happening, we're just going to let it go, because the games are happening. Like, what are they going to do about it? And like, what's the point of upsetting that apple cart?
At least they finished the arena. I mean, there's that. I mean, barely, but at least they did. And look, I think that's
not without issue, but in terms of the ice quality, but they're playing.
They're playing, and hopefully whatever is figured out from this helps make 4 years from now a better situation. And that's optimistically the best I could hope for.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Well, we have some big games coming up in the tournament that we are going to talk about in terms of our games we're looking most forward to watching coming up next.
New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our businesses and think there has to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. I love how Quo makes everything so simple. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number, so nothing gets missed. Everyone sees the full conversation thread, which makes replies faster and more personal, and it works right from your phone or computer, and you could even keep your existing number. It's no surprise Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedOnNHL. That's QUO.com/LockedOnNHL. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers.
All right. The tournament continues in Milan this weekend. And today we have the first half of the women's quarterfinal games, where Czechia will take on Sweden and Team USA will take on Italy. The Czechia-Sweden game is going to be really interesting, because Sweden was in Group B, and they absolutely wiped the floor with Group B. And this is like their chance to prove that maybe they belonged in Group A, right? And they kind of felt like the odd team out in this circumstance. And so Czechia, which has played a very physical game over the line in terms of, I would say, penalties and, maybe some inappropriate play there as part of their style of play. That's just Team Czechia and what they do. And with Carla McLeod as the head coach, who's the Ottawa Charge head coach in the PWHL. And so I am very intrigued by this matchup. I think it's going to be the best of the four quarterfinals, in my opinion. The second half is on Saturday with Canada taking on Germany and Finland taking on the Swiss. The Finland versus Switzerland game should also be pretty good, with Finland maybe finally getting over the norovirus situation.
Yeah.
And then the Swiss, I think, they had some really good moments in the tournament, but like the odds just weren't in their favor in terms of actually racking up the wins on the Group A side. And so, like, can they redeem themselves in this one?
Lots to prove there for them. And again, I think the reason that we're seeing the matches that don't involve USA and Canada being the more competitive ones, you want, and I think this is very interesting for Czechia, for Finland. You don't want it to be the big two and then everybody else, and somebody's got to step up and take that next step, and it'll be interesting to see which of these countries gets to do that.
Yeah, I think, in the quarterfinals, I think USA and Canada definitely have the easiest path here in terms of moving forward. So that's why we're focused on the other teams. But
Yep.
On the men's side of things, obviously the biggest game of the weekend is the big grudge match today between Finland and Sweden. And those games are always bonkers. They're always the most fun. And I personally love them because I have no vested interest in the outcome. I just want to have a good time and watch these two teams go at it for national pride.
It is a great rivalry. They play some great hockey, and I am looking forward to it. And you're talking about regional bragging rights within the Olympics, the pride, the competitiveness. I am looking forward to seeing this hockey game as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then looking ahead to Saturday, I would say the two games that I'm looking at the most are maybe Finland versus Italy, just because Finland lost that game to Slovakia, in their first game. And, we'll see what happens against Sweden, but this could be a really important game for them. And, with Slovakia winning that first game, I think it'll be really interesting to see.
It will be, and it could be desperation time depending on how things go on Friday. So, yeah.
Yeah, it will be for sure. And then on Sunday, I want to see the Swiss against Czechia. I think that is going to be the big game of that day for me.
Switzerland always hangs tough, and so does Czechia. I think this will be a very entertaining game.
Yeah, I think so too. Obviously, with Czechia, one of the questions for me is going to be the goaltending, and if they decide to change goaltenders, because I don't think Dostal looked that great, honestly, in the first game. So are they going to make a change in net for these other games? So that is the storyline I will be looking at there for sure. But all of these games are going to be a lot of fun. And, even if you're watching games from teams with, fewer NHLers or more regional rivalries, and you look at Germany versus Latvia, that could be a really fun game. Right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And these guys are all bringing their best in Olympic competition, and it's a high level of hockey, and it's fun to watch.
Yeah, I want to see Leon Draisaitl shooting on Merzlikins.
Yeah,
that sounds like fun to me.
It does. Bring it.
Bring all of it to me. And that's why I love these kind of tournaments, and especially expanded from Four Nations, where we get to see some of these other players from all these other national teams get to participate. That's what's making this time so much fun. And, in a lot of ways, a nice break from the NHL season. So we will continue to watch these games, and we'll talk about it next week on the show. We'll see where we are at that point as we're reaching the end of the Ben's tournament. That will do it for today's show. Thanks so much for listening. Gil, you'll be back on Monday to talk to some hosts from around the NHL channel about what's going on with their teams and the Olympians on their teams, I'm assuming. And we'll have our game night shows on the channel reporting about the Olympic tournament and so much more. And we will see you then. Have a great day, everybody.